Good night. It's Sunday, the 2nd of March 2025, wartime London. Now, things are happening at an unbelievable speed. I've been getting a lot of things done out and about today. A really good day it was for doing it. A bit cold, but good. Any event, to add to what I further said and keep it short, before Zelensky went to the United States, he was fully primed up by the French and the British, mainly the British. And MI5 and MI6 gave him all of the layout how to do it. It was a pretty futile attempt to do what Biden didn't do in America, was to get Trump to agree to back up the British troops and the French troops. And Trump had nothing to do with that, and he was right. No matter how he treated Zelensky or anyone else, he couldn't and wouldn't agree to that. And neither would Joe Biden either. What brought the change was the fact that Trump had went ahead and committed the cardinal sin of speaking to the Russians. According to the Europeans, you don't speak to them. They have to be put out, destroyed. But that's not as easy done. So after 3 years of war, Trump was speaking to the Russians, and then the British and the French began to say, oh, what are we going to do? Where are we in all this? They're under the direct leadership of George Soros' foundation and the World Economic Forum, and they're a huge globalist crowd. The new likely Prime Minister of Germany has decided to renege on his promise to stop migration. It looks like he's going to go back and increase migration into Germany. Don't hold me to that. That's what the initial stages looks like. Starmer's going to do nothing. He's going to continually to pack the hotels of Britain with migrants, and Macron's going to do the same. So they're under a different order altogether. And the entity that's driving them, we know well what it is, we know how it works, but it's not that easy to confront it. It's not out in the open. But this move of Trump is driving them mad. They sent over Zelensky. They thought they might get a deal that he'd commit American troops to war, and they want war, or they want Russia extinguished. The situation now is they're meeting in London tonight, I think it was today. And funny enough, Giorgia Meloni of Italy went over, and I thought she'd have stayed out of that. Very unwise for her to be there. I think she's a conservative, and she's a genuine conservative. But of course, she's a member of NATO, and as such, the whole edifice of NATO and the usefulness of NATO is now being called into question. I don't think it is. I think if there's any pulling out of NATO by Trump, it'll not be too sudden. It'll be done over a period, but definitely in his presidency. But if it was just that, they could wait a couple of weeks or a couple of months and get things together without this rush. The problem they have now is that they have decided that there's going to be no talks with Russia about the Ukraine without them and the Ukraine. Now, the Trump's talks are going to be more about nuclear disarmament. And he's going to hope eventually to have nuclear disarmament talks between the United States, Russia, and China, the other major power. Depending on how they go, then the British and the French might be involved because they're nuclear armed as well. But that's not the big problem. I don't know, do they mind whether there's nuclear disarmament or not. But France has talked about moving nuclear weapons into Germany, so they can use them against Russia, even if President Trump won't use his. So it looks to me like that they will decide tonight. You can't be sure that as the talks between Trump and Russia progresses on the disarmament matters, they could evolve to some degree into talking about Ukraine. And the very minute that becomes aware that Trump and Putin are talking about Ukraine, or their teams are talking about Ukraine, the British, the French, and the Germans are going to invade Ukraine. Isn't that something? They're showing all the signs that they were going to invade it anyway, but they wanted the Americans to back them up. It was on their terms. Now they're going to invade them anyway. So what we have to watch for, folks, is as the talks progress, to be wide aware this is what's on the cards, because you won't see it on any other medium. That could easily mean that nuclear bombs, would be launched at Britain. And one of the things the British Prime Minister, Mr. Starmer, said this morning, I think it was, is that they have missiles being produced in Belfast. And they're going to supply the missiles direct to Ukraine. Well, they have always been supplying some, but they're going to supply them specifically out of Belfast. And Belfast is only 70 miles from where I'm sitting here. 70 miles. 70. About 100 kilometres, or maybe a little more, 105 kilometres. So that's where the bomb could be landed, in Belfast. And that would wipe out Belfast City. Isn't that something? My viewers can never comprehend the viciousness of Europeans. Don't forget, Americans are a type of Europeans too. But Trump is an unusual guy. He definitely does want peace. And this thing about Russia going to take more territory if Ukraine's settled is nonsense. They're not going to invade Poland, Lithuania, or anything as it stands at the moment. They're not going to get them to relinquish what the territories they've seized. But that's what we're looking at. When the British, the French, and the Germans would go into France, they thought the Americans would cover them. They're not going to. So now they're going to have their own minuscule armies and air forces enforcing no-fly zones, and fireworks are going to fly. And before too long, they'll be being beaten to a pulp. And when they're being beaten, France will likely launch a nuclear weapon from Germany towards Moscow or some part of Russia. And then Russia will reciprocate. They're determined for nuclear war. If they succeeded in getting Zelensky sorted out and Ukraine back the way they want it, there would not be nuclear war. But Russia's not going to give up. Now, will President Trump be able to prevent the Europeans opening fire with nuclear weapons? I don't know. Certainly, if they open fire with nuclear weapons, he will not be able to prevent the Russians firing back. Nobody is safe in this scenario, particularly the continent of Europe. It's very, very tense. The main point of my videos here is to understand just how jittery the European leaders are. And they're all bad ones except Maloney. The only decent one of them is Maloney. So watch this space. I like to keep you up to date. That's only 8 minutes. That's the most recent development out of London today. It really is laughable. If there wasn't the nuclear weapons, I'd clap my hands. We see them getting beaten and making them eat humble pie. But the nuclear weapons is the thing that kept the Americans out up to now. And you could see the American continent and the rest of the world free from this scourge of the European warlords, and we are kind of stuck in the middle of it. We'll see you back, folks. Comment underneath. I'm sorry for all the videos today, but it's a very serious situation. Bye.